Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lieutenant Colonel Chris Bowers, and I'll be your Master of Ceremonies this afternoon. On behalf of the Eastern Army National Guard Aviation Training Site, Commander Colonel Randy L. Lutz, I welcome distinguished guests, fellow service members, families, and friends to this special occasion. The retirement of Sergeant First Class Kenneth Apperson. We also extend a warm welcome to Sergeant First Class Apperson's life partner Stacy Orwan, son Josh, daughter Lily, mother Kara, and Aunt Katie, and Stacy's daughter Angela. We are truly honored by your presence with us today as we celebrate the service and achievements of Sergeant First Class Apperson. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the national anthem and remain standing for the invocation.
Let's pray. Father, thank you for this opportunity to celebrate Ken's service to this country. We know that Ken could not have arrived at this point without the support of his family and friends, so we thank you for their support. Most importantly, Lord, we thank you for your faithfulness and your sacrifice on the cross for all of us. There are many doors we walk through in this life, and it's great to know that they all provide the opportunity for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Please be seated. I think God was calling colonels over there for a second. So. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming today's presiding officer, the Eats Commander, Colonel Randy Lutz.
I'll start off with this, and if it doesn't work, I'm gonna get rid of it. So, good afternoon. Welcome, family members, service members, distinguished guests, current soldiers, and retirees. It's an honor and privilege today to be able to stand before you, attend and represent Ken at his retirement event. Today we celebrate a milestone for him being his retirement from the Army Aviation Enterprise, the Pennsylvania Army National Guard, the U.S. Army, after 28 years of service. And we thank the family tremendously because the service and sacrifice that's been paid is not singular, it's collaborative here, and the preponderance of that sacrifice is directly correlated to the family. So we truly thank you for your sacrifice throughout his entire tenure. That flexibility in the foundation is absolutely necessary so that we get the best of your soldier every single day, and we did absolutely get that from Ken. So thank you for your unwavering support, your commitment to service, and your selfless sacrifice to our great nation. It means a tremendous amount. If we could have a round of applause, please. So thank you, Stacy, Lily, Joshua, Ben, again, for your sacrifice. We know that today several members couldn't be here, being Miranda and Nathan. We are recording this today so that they have the opportunity to be able to view it later and hopefully appreciate the ceremony that celebrates his remarkable service to our nation. So it's of note, ironically, 28 years ago today, PV1 Apperson signed on the dotted line, truly, being 16 September 1994, joining the California Army National Guard, entering service to our great nation. So it's quite ironic that we have the ability today to demonstrate the celebration for him during that sacrifice and the amazing day. So let's take a moment here and kind of walk down memory lane. I'm going to hit a few highlights to try to give you like the fastest 3 to 5 minutes of military service, much like the fastest 3 minutes in football on Sunday nights, so that we can roll through this, because the star of the show here is Ken, and we want to be able to honor him through several gifts of gratitude and recognition to the family, and then open the floor so that he can communicate his message to you. So, as all of you know, Sergeant First Class Apperson is a very distinguished and accomplished aviation non-rated crew member. He's dedicated his life to service in the Army and to the Army Aviation Enterprise. He served as a maintainer, a flight engineer, and 22 years of continuous service as an aviation professional with distinction. He's qualified the CH-47D and the F. He's accrued more than 3,200 hours of flight time, flown more than 900 hours of goggles, and more than 100 hours of combat in Iraq during a deployment. We'll get to other domestic operations, significant contributions in California and across the continental United States here towards the end. He, in his enlisted roles throughout his various assignments in the California Army National Guard, while mobilized on deployment, and then here in the state of Pennsylvania, working for the Eastern Army National Guard Aviation Training Site and supporting domestic operations. He served as a flight engineer, a STANS platform instructor, so standardization instruction. So he's a subject matter expert in his area of academics and flight instruction to be able to coach, teach, and mentor to qualify other non-rated crew members that are attending courses of instruction to be able to return to their units and do the nation's business here at home and abroad. Aside from that, he had many other significant contributions, which we'll also touch on at the end. Ken is always the first to raise his hand, contribute to a team event, probably take on more than what he has margin for, and always delivers the results that we're looking for. Sergeant First Class Apperson has consistently demonstrated leadership, professionalism, technical expertise above and beyond throughout his total of 28 years of service to date, through standardization instruction and when the nation called, whether it was multiple NTC rotations, multiple deployments, challenges, standing up courses, supporting other units that required that business, and he was the first to volunteer. So we're very, very grateful for your contributions and your sacrifice and your commitment to excellence and the Army Aviation Enterprise. Ken, I can't thank you enough for that. So we do want to thank you for your commitment to excellence. We're going to provide you a few things here in just a few minutes, and for those significant contributions. And it's been an absolute honor and privilege to be able to serve with you in cargo, service at 3, and then fly multiple missions with you. So you'll absolutely be missed, but we know that we kept you as part of our team as you're transitioning to the Special Applications Group to continue to support the EADS mission, which is really what's most important. So let's take a really quick walk down memory lane here. I'll try to give you the timeline as quickly as possible, but as efficiently as possible here. So Ken's biography, assignments, and accomplishments. And these are things that we talked about this morning to make sure that we can convey to you, because that's really what we want you to walk away with, that he considers highlights of his career. So he arrived on the planet in 1970 in Carmichael, California. It's a suburb of Sacramento, California. He graduated from high school in 1988 from East Union High School, which is Manteca, California. And then in 1994, he joined the California Army National Guard, signed on the dotted line, and his first unit of assignment was Company G, 1st the 140th Aviation in Stockton, California, which was formerly known as the 49th Medium Helicopter Company. So he was a Chinook guy from the very, very beginning. In 1994, in 1 November, he reported to Fort Jackson, South Carolina for his basic training. He culminated basic training and reported on 1995, 26 January, to his Advanced Individual Training, AIT, at Fort Eustis, Virginia, where he would learn and get qualified on the maintenance skill set associated with the exact aircraft that he was working on, being the CH-47 Delta and some other maintenance-related activities in the aviation enterprise. So in 1995, PV2 Apperson returned to his unit of assignment in California and picked up what they considered an ADSW job, which is an active duty special work job. So he was an active duty soldier reporting to his unit daily to support maintenance activity while gaining experience to set himself up for success here, to contribute to the unit while working on helicopters. And in 1996, from January to June, he participated in a large-scale exercise, OCONUS, in Panama, named New Horizons Mission. And that's where he first met some of the Pennsylvania Army National Guardsmen and some of our former G Company folks in that mission. So there were 7 states that attended that activity, and because Ken is a very social individual, he was actively engaging individuals that were attending that exercise. He immediately established some long-standing relationships with folks that are in this room today. So that's really kind of his start or linkage, where from California he deployed to Panama for a large-scale exercise that was multiple weeks long, and he met some Pennsylvania Army National Guardsmen, which ultimately led him to coming here. So we'll get there in just a moment. So in July, he deployed to NTC, the National Training Center in California. So because the National Training Center was really in their backyard south of where he was, California very actively participated to augment shortages that were there or support that directly. And so at the time, California and Pennsylvania in the middle 90s and even the early 2000s were the 2 premier CH-47 units across the nation because of their professionalism, because of their readiness, and because of their capability with subject matter experts that existed within those 2 enterprises. So in August, he entered AGR service. So he knocked it out of the park while he was in NTC and the mission in Panama. He was immediately recognized for that by his enlisted members, and he was provided an opportunity to go active guard reserve as a readiness officer in the unit where he was assigned, which I think was very rewarding, very heavy lifting. You're in the trench doing a lot of business to prepare your unit every day to be able to show up and execute training on those drill weekends, as well as posturing the unit to maintain personnel readiness, training, etc., that enabled the unit to be able to deploy later. So in 2003, we'll fast forward, his unit was mobilized for the Iraq deployment. And there were multiple locations that his unit, much like G Company did, and the units that flowed into Iraq early to support operational mission capabilities. So they first deployed to Erbil, which was Camp Loki, and then ultimately ended up moving to Camp Anaconda in Balad. He was assigned to Company B, 1126th Aviation Regiment out of Stockton, and that mission evolved, right? So it first started as Operation Noble Eagle, which is what the initial mission for combat operations was following the 9/11 exercise, or the 9/11 catastrophe. And then it became Operation Enduring Freedom, and then from there it evolved into Operation Iraqi Freedom. His unit conducted helicopter assault force activities every night. We call them HAFs, so it's air assault operations with special operations folks to be able to target, identify, locate, and remove the bad guys that were causing a lot of the instability in the area, that were resulting in a lot of the U.S. And allied deaths in that area. So the mission that he was on was a premier mission set. It was fantastic. His unit executed tremendous capability there, working with 10 Special Forces Group. It was a very rewarding deployment for him, as most are in that mission profile, and they redeployed stateside in late 2003. That is when Lily arrived, by the way, just prior to that deployment. So they redeployed in October to California. And in September of 2004, he actually resigned his AGR job because he loved doing maintenance and flying on the helicopter in the theater of operation. And he decided that he wanted to continue his role as a flight line mechanic, and he became a federal technician at the Aviation Support Facility #2 in Stockton, California. So instead of doing a lot of the office work and the preparation, he wanted to get back out on the flight line, turn some wrenches, do some flying, and get back to that mission profile, which was really important to him. In 2006, which was October 2006, he supported the EAT CH-47D IPC, which is the instructor pilot course. So it was one of the first instructor pilot courses that we stood up here at the Eastern Army National Guard Aviation Training Site. Ken actually came from California on ADOS to support that mission set as a flight engineer. Now it just so happens there's several folks in this room, and this will date some of those folks, so no offense here, but essentially he supported CW2 Rob Hall, and Rob Hall retired as a W5 2.5 years ago, works for the FAA, now assigned in Hawaii. It was Captain Keith Graham at the time, and it's now Colonel Keith Graham at Joint Force Headquarters. It was Major Greg Clark, who Colonel Clark had retired several years ago as the former EATS commander and a SAO out of the state of Pennsylvania. It was First Sergeant Todd Erb, Staff Sergeant Guy Miller, who's now a Sergeant Major, right? And it was Sergeant First Class Dameron and Sergeant First Class Hummel, right? So he's been around a long time, done a lot of great things, and his connection early demonstrated why he should be selected to serve at the EATS, at the tip of the spear, to be one of the premier instructors in the nation, to be able to train the folks that are going to go back out on the tip of the spear and support the generating force. So in 2007, he actually, in July, right, so he attended that course in 2006, which was October timeframe. By July, an opportunity had to volunteer. So once again, he proved himself to be a viable asset, and he was integrated at the EATS. So he'd done an interstate transfer from California to the Pennsylvania Army National Guard, so he went all in saying, hey, this is for me. He was brought on ADSW, and then by December of that year, which was very short term later, 6 months, he was selected into the AGR program, right? So from 2007 to 2022, he was with us here at the Pennsylvania Army National Guard and the Eastern Army National Guard Aviation Training Site, doing remarkable work in every role and responsibility that he had. On 30 August of 2022, he officially retired, and he has transitioned to Special Applications Group in support of the EATS mission. So at the Eastern Army National Guard Aviation Training Site, we're a very large family. We have 115 active Guard Reserve soldiers, and then we have many contractors that support the mission, and we can't do the mission that we do for the nation, for the Army Aviation Enterprise, without our contract force. And much like Ken, many of our contract members are former officers, warrant officers, and enlisted members from the Pennsylvania Army National Guard, and they're a vital part of our family. So he joins great company, and we've already actively engaged and put him to work with some large-scale tasks in the aviation life support equipment shop. And him and Dusty did remarkable work for us in our last aviation resource management survey, getting the highest score that we've ever gotten in that area, being 100%. So it was remarkable work. Again, it demonstrates his professionalism, commitment to excellence, and really seeing every task through to the best of his ability. Some of his accomplishments here, he did a lot of forest fire fighting out of the California Army National Guard, mountain rescues. He supported Hurricane Katrina and Gulf Coast relief efforts. He had his OCONUS deployment to Iraq. He had 8 NTC rotations in the box, which are arduous and grueling. There's a lot of character that's formed there. It's a lot of wisdom through pain. But it pays a lot of dividends later, especially in the environment. And those are great lessons learned that he applied while communicating with students and qualifying them here at the EATS. He flew the last CH-47D model from the EATS to the High Altitude Aviation Training Site in in Eagle Vale, Colorado. And then they commenced to conducting qualifications. So they delivered an aircraft in support of the modernization strategy where the Eastern Army National Guard Aviation Training Site was fielding the newest version of the CH-47 being the F model. They flew the D model out and then did some high altitude aviation training out there, which is remarkable training, super realistic, and absolutely required to operate in today's environments. He served as the EATS water bucket subject matter expert to coordinate training, which is no surprise, right? So, hundreds of hours of firefighting experience out of California. He brought that experience here to help establish and enable our water bucket program and contribute to the experience that we had from an aviation perspective. He was our NVG NCO, the Aviation Life Support Equipment NCO. He was the Cargo Mission Equipment NCO. You can talk to the team about that. We have a giant room of equipment in the event that we need to support a lot of domestic operations because we call the 47 the hotel building, right? So it's got a lot of space, a lot of area to store stuff, and so you want to have everything that you need in there for a pretty versatile mission. He established the EATS Unit Fund, right? So outside of all of the professional things that he was doing, he looked inward, right? And he identified that we needed a way to be able to generate funds to support unit activities that would be solely focused on the camaraderie, the morale, and taking care of families. And that ultimately transitioned to the Mystic Association. He remains actively engaged in the Mystic Association. And again, I can't stress enough that anytime anything goes out from leaders or email that says, hey, we need to assemble a team to manage this event, to support this event, to conduct this activity, to support this community service event, Ken is one of the first folks to be there, and he's always committed, so we're extremely thankful for that. And we're thrilled that you continue to remain with us in that capacity under Mystic. I think one of the last things to recognize here, again, in that regard, is he took it upon himself. Every time a unit fields an aircraft, technically the program management office is supposed to work with that unit to develop a fielding poster. And that poster is part of the lineage associated with the unit. And the Army is all about, lineage and history. And so Ken and the team actually designed that poster for Boeing to support that capability, and it's proudly hung in many spots across the EATS. So again, just another example of going above and beyond outside the duty to be creative, to contribute long-lasting results and requirements there for the unit. So in closing, and it's not the fastest 3 minutes in football, I failed you, sorry. We thank you for your selfless service. We're honored and privileged to have served with you, and you'll be dearly missed. But we're thankful that you'll continue to be part of the EATS mission and the program. So, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Colonel Lutz will now present Sergeant First Class Apperson with several awards and decorations to honor his retirement. Sergeant First Class Apperson, please report. For the family and friends in the audience, it is customary for military personnel to stand during the announcing of official orders. We ask that you stand with us, if able, upon hearing the phrase, attention order. Attention orders. There you go. Meritorious Service Medal is being presented to Sergeant First Class Kenneth E. Apperson for exceptional service spanning over 27 years while serving in the position of increasing responsibility, culminating as the Flight Engineer Standardization Instructor for the Cargo Battalion. Sergeant First Class Apperson's insight, coordination, and training provided the aviation enterprise with an increased capacity for essential firefighting and rescue hoist operations. His efforts in aviation life support equipment have promoted awareness and institutional success locally and at the national level. Sergeant First Class Apperson's actions are keeping with the finest traditions of military service and reflect great credit upon himself, the Eastern Army National Guard Aviation Training Site, and the Pennsylvania Army National Guard in the United States Army. Signed, Mark J. Schindler, Major General, Pennsylvania Army National Guard, the Adjutant General. Please be seated. Sergeant First Class Apperson will now receive several congratulatory certificates for a stellar career of honorable military service. The first certificate is a Certificate of Appreciation for Service in the Armed Forces of the United States of America, signed by our Commander-in-Chief, President Joseph R. Biden. Sergeant First Class Apperson is also receiving the National Guard Bureau Certificate of Service in recognition of over 27 years of service to the Armed Forces of the United States. Finally, Sergeant First Class Apperson is receiving the Soldier for Life box with United States flag, lapel button, and Soldier for Life decals. These items are a symbol of your commitment to the Army and our nation. At this time, First Sergeant Scott Soroki will present a small token of appreciation to Sergeant First Class Apperson on behalf of the Eastern Army National Guard Aviation Training Site.
Colt pistol that says, Sergeant First Class Kenneth E. Apperson, recognition of your 28 years of selfless service, dedication, and contribution to the EATS and the Army Aviation 1994 to 2022. It's been a pleasure, Ken. Thank you very much. We also have a Chinook flag we'd like to present on behalf of the Cargo Training Battalion. Thank you.
Scott was actually one of the we made a gamble in 1996. Had no idea it was going to be here.
And I never thought I'd be standing here with him today. On behalf of Cargo Training.
At this time, I'd like to invite Ms. Stacy Orwan to please come forward. Stacy is being presented with a certificate of appreciation from the Pennsylvania National Guard, which reads, "This is to certify that the Department of Military and Veterans Affairs has awarded the Military Significant Other Certificate of Appreciation to Stacy Orwan for the selfless and faithful devoted service you provided to your spouse. This endless support and understanding assisted in making possible your spouse's lasting contribution to the mission of the Armed Forces in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania." Signed, Mark J. Schindler, Major General, the Adjutant General. Ladies and gentlemen, I will now read the retirement order. Attention orders. The Adjutant General of Pennsylvania orders number 1320029 dated 12 May 2022. Sergeant First Class Kenneth Apperson, effective 31 August 2022, you are retired from service and released from assignment and duty, and upon the date following, placed on the retired reserve list. The people of the United States express their thanks and gratitude for your faithful service. Your contributions to the defense of the United States of America are greatly appreciated. By the order of the governor, signed Keith M. Graham, Colonel, General Staff, Pennsylvania Army National Guard, Chief of Staff. Please remain standing as we recognize Sergeant First Class Apperson on the honorary retired promotion list. Order number 122-02, Kenneth E. Apperson, you are hereby recognized on the honorary retired promotion list of the Pennsylvania Army National Guard, grade promoted to Master Sergeant, effective 1 September 2022. By the order of the governor, signed Keith M. Graham, Colonel, General Staff, Chief of Staff. Please be seated. Good. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Master Sergeant Kenneth Apperson.
So one of the things that, at least all the events that I've been to, customary is to give flowers to those spouse and daughters. So I'd like to present some flowers to Stacy for being there. We've been together for over 2.5 years, and she's been by my side, even though she doesn't like me volunteering for this stuff. And I'd like to present these to Lily, my daughter, my youngest daughter. My eldest daughter's in California, couldn't be here today, but Lily was 2 months old when we deployed in 2003. She was born on 01/02/03, and my orders for deployment were dated January 5th. So, best times and some of the hardest times to leave when she was 2 months old. So, thanks, Lily. So I have 3 boys. Josh and Ben are here today. Nathan lives in North Carolina, wasn't able to be here today, but one of the things that's been customary of all the events I've ever been to is we have a challenge coin, and so I'd like to present them each with a challenge coin today. So, thank you. So as a platform instructor, one of the things they want us to do as you're an instructor in the Army as a whole, is not stand behind the platform, but it was a very wise man that told me once it's best to write your remarks down. So I wrote it down, and unfortunately there's not a podium up there, so I'll stand here today, so if you'll bear with me for that. Thank you, distinguished guests and honored guests and retirees for coming today, and to everyone, I'm very humbled and honored and blessed that you're all here. Thank you. It's a tribute. I appreciate it. Thank you. So you heard some accolades and a recap of a little bit of my career from Lieutenant Colonel to Colonel now. Should be doing your promotion soon, correct, sir? So that's pretty cool. And I really debated on what to say. Usually I'm the one helping plan and put together the events, and now I'm actually up here standing in front of you. And Kenny Chesney says it best in the song "Don't Blink," because it literally seems like it was maybe just a couple of years ago. When I joined, it was just a way for me to get something that I always fall back onto, and ended up falling in love with it, and didn't really know at the time that I had this love affair with this helicopter. So I decided today to tell you a story to kind of put together what Colonel Letts told you guys, and well, if you believe in fate or destiny, when I finish the story, I'll let you be the judge. So the date is September 1977. I was 7 years old. The school year had just started, and we were given a flyer to take home
as you know, most kids get in elementary school. It was an invitation to join the Cub Scouts of America. So, like any elementary school kid, took the flyer home, showed it to my parents, and I learned that my father had been in Cub Scouts and Eagles and Boy Scouts himself. So I got the approval that night, filled out that application form, took it to school, and I joined Cub Scouts. A few weeks later, I noticed a very large helicopter flying over the school. It sounded a little different than regular helicopters, because back then it was mostly Hueys and a couple other helicopters, and then this local unit, the 49th Beat Helicopter Company, got Chinooks. I had no idea what a Chinook was. Anyway, it was an Army supply depot right around the corner, not too far from the airport where the Stockton Army was located. They would park the helicopters in the back corner. Because it was a supply depot, there was a lot of railroad tracks, and so they could go in and out of the gates there to supply it. And one of the main roads as we went into town, we would pass by the helicopters all the time. In spring of 1978, I was at a Cub Scout meeting one afternoon after school, and one of the scoutmasters came to talk to us about the Boy Scouts portion of the program. He told us that he was a commercial airline pilot. He also said he used to fly helicopters in the Army. I was very intrigued. When he finished telling the story, he asked any of us if we had any questions. And I asked him if he knew about the large helicopters that were flying over our town. He said they were called Chinooks. So now it's June 1978. The school year has just ended. There was a Cub Scout day camp that was in the next town over where I graduated high school, because the town I grew up in, if you can believe it, in California, in the Central Valley, it was a town. I still remember the town city limits was 973 people. So you can believe that, right? California isn't big. Everyone thinks it's the beach or San Diego. So. At the end of the week, the local Army National Guard unit sends a helicopter and a crew to land at the park for this day camp for the Cub Scouts. So we can meet the crew, check out the helicopter, and all that kind of good stuff. Well, when we got done with the crew and the introductions and showing us all about the helicopter, they gave us this poster. Unfortunately, I didn't bring the poster today, but I asked the crew to sign the poster, as most of us did. Took the poster home, folded it up, and kept it, and I still have it to this day. Actually, I had it in my office all the way up until I relinquished my office to now Sergeant First Class Blake Amy. Every year throughout high school, the school district required all of us to take the ASVAB, as I'm sure probably several of you in this room have. I was fortunate enough to not find that test very difficult. I did well enough that the recruiters were always calling my house. My mother would tell them, why are they calling the house? Tell them to stop calling the house. And if she was here today, she would be nodding her head. She says, you're not joining the military, so why are they always calling? So I had no idea. Maybe they stopped by, saw my test scores, and got our home phone number, because you know what cell phones back then. So I got the home phone number and we're calling the house. So, as you heard, I graduated in 1988. After that, I started junior college, and another passion of mine was drawing. I had taken 5.5 years of architectural mechanical drafting, and I was actually strongly considering going to Camp San Luis Obispo in Southern California. I also decided to take radio broadcasting. I ended up getting married and quit college. I was very young to get married, and life can get in the way of life sometimes, as we all know. March of 1994, I separated from my first wife and started a second job at the local Red Lobster. I trained to be a food server, and with a food server and trainer, and her name was Michelle. Michelle had a brother named Chris. When I started Red Lobster, Chris was a split op, and he was at Fort Benning going through basic training for his senior sentiment. Michelle thought it would be great, because you're just like my brother. You need to be my brother. And I'm like, where's he at? So she told me the story, and shortly after the 4th of July, he came home. Got to know him really well. We became friends almost on the spot. His unit was a mechanized unit down in Merced, California. It was a little over an hour from our house. So I would drive him to drills for the summer, and the mechanized unit would drill a lot more than we would in aviation. So it seemed like every other weekend they were having a drill. But he didn't have a car, so I would drive him down there, because I've always been intrigued by the military. So anyway, one afternoon we were picking him up from drill. We drove home. He's like, man, I really need to find a unit a little closer, because it's just a little bit too far. And he's like, I'm not really into the mechanized. So he had a conversation with his dad that night, and it turns out his dad knew a guy that was in the local 49th Medium Helicopter Company, and at that time they had already changed over to Engine Company 140th Aviation Regiment. His name is Nick Lowe. And Nick told Chris's dad, he's like, hey, you should have, I'll set it all up, you have Chris come out and I'll show him all around. Well, I was the one that drove Chris there, and I was intrigued. He said, hey, you wanna come with me? And I said, yeah, let's go check it out. So we went down there, and sure enough, what do you see? There's this big Chinook helicopter, and so we got a really cool tour of the whole place, the flight facility, a couple of the other helicopters were there. Went into flight operations, and he introduced us to a gentleman named Chris Miller, who just made captain, was in charge of flight operations. We had one of those floor-to-ceiling maps. Of course, California's quite big, so it's one of those topographical maps that you can actually touch and you can almost read it like it was Braille. And of course, this is September. California burns. You can almost take a watch by it every year. Day 1 of May 1st starts fire season in California. So he's showing us where all the units, all the helicopters are at between the Blackhawks and the Chinooks, and I'm just like, this is really cool. A helicopter can carry 2,000 gallons of water underneath it and put fires out. That's like a firefighter on steroids. So I was very, very interested. So we got done with our tour, got done, we were driving home, and he's like, man, I think I'm gonna transfer this unit. I said, well, don't you have a commitment to the other one? He goes, no, I'm gonna talk to the recruiter. Well, I took him to talk to the recruiter, and the recruiter was like, so what are you up to? And that was about a week before. I had to retake the ASVAB test because I had graduated in 88, this is 94. Took the test, went back and saw him, and it's funny how you always remember the name of your recruiter. Starting first class, Ron Gallardo, lost track of him over the years and stuff, but I joined today, signed on the dotted line, and September 16th, 1994. Signed up for the MOS of 67 uniform back then, before we were reclassified here about a little over a decade ago. The company is G Company 140th Aviation, some thought to be the sister unit of what was G Company 104th Aviation Unit. Arrived at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, as Colonel Les mentioned to you, on 1 November. So I'm sitting in Fresno, getting ready to get on a plane on Halloween that year. But showed up down there, and yeah, Fort Jackson, that was interesting. You show up in the barracks in the building out there, kind of look like the Ramada, then you go in, you're like, I think I'm in Fort Leavenworth. Graduated from basic training, got on a bus, went to an AIT at Fort Eustis, and I fell in love with it even more. Fort Eustis is right on the Chesapeake Bay in Virginia, and we would get up and do morning PT right along the bay, and yeah, that was pretty cool. Absolutely fell in love with it, but I'm in the National Guard, so when I get done, I get to go home. So, I was fortunate enough that when I graduated, I was able to graduate as honor graduate from the course. So that was pretty good, because I beat out one of my closest friends, Steven. I think he's the one that actually won, because now he's a pilot for NetJets and makes about 4 times as much money as I do. But that's all right, we're great friends, and one of these days I'm going to get a flying his G6. So. As Colonel Lutz mentioned, that first drill in June, because I graduated in May, it was the middle of May, June had already commenced. So June, the commander stands up, first formation, Major Keenan, I actually remember his name, he actually transferred out here a few years ago to Massachusetts, where he was originally from. He was at Eats one time for a sim here about 10 years ago, and ran into each other. It's a big world, but it's not. Anyway, he announced, it's like, hey, we got part-time Christmas help, as they called it. I was the first one in line. I'm like, I want to learn how to work on this helicopter and get some hands-on training. So I did. Back then, it was the place to be. You either had to die, retire, or get promoted and transfer out. So there would be a vacancy. Otherwise, there was no vacancies, because all the flight platoon guys were all the maintainer guys on the line maintaining all the helicopters. But this was my opportunity to get in the door, so I tried it, and well, October 1st came, and there was no more money for the year or any positions available. But that's okay. So anyway, September 30th came, money ended, I went back to doing a different job. A few years passed, there were no positions, but I kept volunteering for all different kinds of stuff, because they know that if you volunteer and you get seen, then it's another way for yourself to get your foot in the door. So Stacy will definitely tell you how many times I volunteered. She's like, really? Does the Army know who I am? As mentioned, during the summer of 1998, there was a mission to go to National Training Center, Fort River, California, Mojave Desert. If a lot of you don't know, it sits about a mile high above sea level. At that time, Sergeant First Class Steve Armstrong was one of the flight platoon sergeants, and he was put in charge of He was temporarily assigned as the first sergeant for this mission. So the mission was NTC was scheduled for June. During the March drill, Steve found me and asked why he had found that I had volunteered to go. He wanted to know if I had ever been there and knew anything about NTC. Of course, I'd never been there, so it's desert. My grandmother lived down near there, and so I was like, okay, we drive through there every summer to go visit my grandmother, so that's about all I knew. So he proceeded to tell me that it's in the Mojave Desert. It's hot, it's dusty, it is not a great deployment, let me tell you. I told Steve that I've done previous summers doing annual training at the flight facility, and I really wanted to learn what it was like to do field maintenance when an aircraft would break down in the field, and I learned how to do field expedient maintenance. So he stared at me for a minute and then said, he goes, "I'm keeping my eye on you during AT." I said, "Well, I would hope so, you're the first sergeant." So we ended up having a really great AT. I learned a lot. As we unloaded the vehicles after we got back to the flight facility there in Stockton, Steve pulled me aside and talked to me, told me he was impressed with my performance. He mentioned that a few of the flight crew members mentioned me by name, that maybe I might be interested in joining the flight platoon when maybe there's another spot opening up. He said the next spot was mine if I was interested, and I said I didn't even hesitate. Steve said it probably wouldn't be until April of the next year. That was in July of 1998. In January of 1999 came very fast. My unit got another mission support request to go to NTC. It was in our backyard, so it wasn't uncommon. I asked if I was interested in going, and I said yes. Before I knew it, I was back in the California desert. We'd been there for about a week. One night, I was just there as maintenance. One night, the crew went flying and they did a night vision goggle support, and they flew late. It was about 4 a.m. in the morning. The flight engineer popped into our tent, woke a couple of us up, and told my supervisor at that time, a fellow by the name of Mike Slish, Staff Sergeant Slish, that the auxiliary power unit stopped working. He said it sounded like it blew up, but when they went back there to look at it, it was still in one piece, thankfully. Staff Sergeant Wayne Wyzimbiak was in our tent, sitting in the bunk next to mine. He said it was, he had heard what was said, told the flight engineer that we would get out on the first thing in the morning. Mike agreed. I heard the whole conversation. I told Wayne and Mike, I said, yeah, I'd like to go too. I wanted to volunteer to get out there for anybody else. My chance to get some more experience. 6 a.m. rolled around, we got up, headed out to assess the helicopter. What you don't know is Wayne is an engine mechanic, and some say he was probably an engine whisperer. He could rebuild a 712 from a new model in the engine shop without even hesitating. The summer that I worked there, I had the opportunity to work in the shop with him and do an engine rebuild. I think the guy could probably do it with his eyes closed, one hand behind his back. It was that big. 714 came out and he was like, okay, I think it's time to retire. So, he had a pretty good idea what had happened to the APU. We loaded up in a Humvee and down the flight line we took off, and dust blowing behind us. Long story short, we had the APU out, removed, tore down, rebuilt, and installed in under 4 hours. I have a picture of it too. Myself and Mike Slish took it out and we were kind of kissing it like a little baby. NTC is a massive training base. The training there is set up like war games. You have 3 cells. You have a red cell, blue cell, and a white cell. The red and blue cells engage each other for war games and stuff for training purposes. And then the white cell is the neutral cell, playing referee and oversees everything. They're also known as the overseer controllers, or OCs. As we were performing the maintenance on the Chinook, an OC pulls up in his Humvee, jumps out, and is like, "What in the heck are you guys doing?" We got the ramp level, we got the Humvee backed up, we've got an APU in the back of the Humvee, we got the APU from that helicopter on the ramp. That's toward the kind of looks like an operating room, and he just went crazy. "You guys can't do that. That needs to be in a room, secure, in a shop." He just went off. So Wayne just kind of looked at him, and was like, "Hey, sorry, whatever. Yep, gotcha." Well, he was so mad he didn't like an answer. He got to something, he tore off down the road. "I'm going to fly out, trying to go talk to the base commander." And he did. We had about an hour left. We got it all done, put it all back in. Got the utility pressure all pumped up the days before the Yakutia. As soon as he pulled up right behind the helicopter. He said, "Hey, do you mind moving to the side?" He looked at me and gave me a rude look, and he's like, "Okay." So he backed up over there, got out and went to say something, and then right then, Wayne's ringing the bells because we knew he had pulled up, and the bells was a sign, "Hey, get ready, it's gonna get loud." We started the APU, fire off first time. The OC stood there, hands like this, shook his head, didn't say a word, got back in the Humvee, and off down the road he went. Later on, we find out he went back to flight operations You're not gonna believe what they did. They got it fixed, and I think the helicopter's back up to fly. So we got it, packed up all our stuff, closed it all up the aircraft, went back, got in our tent. At that time, the acting commander was a guy by the name of Rob Little. Rob Little comes and finds us, and he's like, "So what exactly happened?" So we told him the story. He goes, "You're not gonna believe what he did." So he comes back. He raised the crap storm, told the commander this and that. They found Rob. Rob's like, "We do this all the time. We're the Army National Guard." Most of the folks that go to ATC at that time, mostly active duty units. Anyway, it blew over. We were there only for 12 days. The day we were supposed to leave, we got called to the base commander of NTC. So we show up in his office, we go into the conference room, and we all were part of a briefing. As it turns out, that helicopter was down and back up from the flight from being red-X'd of serious maintenance in under 7 hours. A National Guard unit, let alone any unit, we have, I don't know if the record's ever been broken, but we hold the record at NTC for having the least amount of time of an aircraft having required major maintenance. Got back home, it was only a 2-week call, it was 14 days. That 14th day, the final formation, we got called up in front of the formation. The 3 of us received an commendation medal for meritorious service for our expeditious. They kind of equated us to a NASCAR team to be able to pull that AP out, put it back in, put it back together and stuff. And the 3 of us had just gone to NTC in 1998, so 2 deployments to NTC in less than 8 months. So it was quite an accomplishment. I just thought it was really fun. So I progressed fairly quickly, learning to cruise Chinook by the fall of 1999. I was rated as an RO1 crew chief. After joining the flight platoon, I completed my evaluation. The next flight after receiving my flight evaluation and getting my ability to be able to fly as a crew chief, I realized that I'd gone on another flight. Turns out that that same crew that flew the helicopter when I was in Cub Scouts was the same crew that I'd flown, that I just flew with. I started to remember the names that were on there. As it turns out, 21 years later, those same guys were the same guys that I crewed with. I was 7, and they were a lot younger. So one of the great things that I do miss was when I joined in the 90s, there was a lot of Vietnam era pilots and crew members that came through. So I was very fortunate to be raised, if you will, in the National Guard with guys that had experience from Vietnam and through the 70s, from A models, B models, C models, D models. So I was very, very blessed to be able to have that. I've always had a love affair with helicopters, growing up with them flying over my school, watching shows and movies like Airwolf, Blue Thunder, Magnum PI, fueled a desire that I didn't really know that I had. I saw a chance of getting involved with them during that drill weekend when we did that visit with Chris and Nick and took that tour. In August of 1999, I was assigned as the Unit Readiness NCO and actually ended up working for the commander, Captain Chris Miller, who made Major Chris Miller, who is actually a still close personal dear friend of mine, who does junior ROTC outside of Fort Rucker in Dothan, Alabama. I deployed with my unit in January 2003, and as you learned, Lily was just 3 days old when I received my orders on January 5th. We were fortunate enough to be back home from deployment at the end of October 2003. I got promoted to sergeant from deployment and went to school to keep my rank in March of 2004. The war caused the rules to change enough that I was now eligible to get promoted to staff sergeant. Unfortunately, I was not allowed to get promoted by the AGR commander, even though my first sergeant and unit commander had already approved it. I've never been a fan of politics. Sometimes some things are just out of my control. In August of 2004, the Stockton Flight Facility had opened 3 positions to be flight maintenance, flightline maintenance, and flight engineers on your own helicopter. I applied, was offered a job as a wage grade 11. I resigned the AGR program, as you guys learned earlier, and became a federal technician for the first time, and worked there for almost 3 years. In December 2006, I was a flight engineer in charge of my helicopter. What was at that time the largest fire in California history was burning in the mountains of north of Los Angeles and what is known as the Los Padres National Forest. You can look it up and consume it. I believe it was just over 300,000 acres. One of our units, SIs, approached me. His name is Ed, as we were finishing up from that day and preparing for the next day with the water buckets. He asked if I was interested in the special mission temporary assignment to go to Eats. I hesitated at first because you see, in California, Eats had a reputation. Eats was considered the best Army aviation school to go to. It was known throughout all of California. But you had better have your stuff together, because if you were to show up at Eats and you didn't have your stuff together, you did not study, you were probably going to go home. So I asked if I wanted to go, and as I wondered, he explained that the Eats needed a flight engineer to come and help crew a Chinook for the first time ever. They were introducing an instructor pilot course. One of our pilots was going to be there. That pilot was Joe Rosenwald. I don't know if many of you remember, it was, I think maybe 3 years ago now. There was a Chinook and a Black Hawk that went into a very dangerous situation. They didn't know if they were going to make it out alive to go rescue a bunch of civilians, that the only way they were out was because of helicopters. Joe was the CW-5 pilot in command of that Chinook, and the pilot in command of that Black Hawk were the two that made the decision to go do that. Joe's an awesome guy, and it was great to come here with him for the instructor pilot course. I accepted the assignment, volunteered, and stayed for the entire course. My very first flight engineer experience here at Eats was Staff Sergeant Dean Miller, now Sergeant Major Dean Miller, and he gave me my commander's eval. So I got to meet another guy here at Eats. The course ran from October through December, and I had never been to Eats or Pennsylvania before that time. Assignment ended, I came back home. I came in touch, or kept in touch with Dave Dameron, who is the NCOIC that I worked for while I was here for the course. In May of 2007, right after Cinco de Mayo, he gave me a call. He was like, hey, what'd you do for Cinco de Mayo? As many of you know, I like to, one of my passions is cooking, so we kind of compared notes, and then we started in with Sal. He interested in long-term ADSW. At the time, it was Sergeant Major Chip, Command Sergeant Major Chip Gilliland, and he had just come out of his office and said that he's got about 2.5 years worth of ADSW money, and he's like, you know anybody be interested in coming out to Eats? And he's like, I just might have a guy. Long story short, July of 2007, I came out in ADSW. December 17th, I was now back into the AGR protocol. That's it, kind of in a snapshot. Throughout my life and my Army career, I quickly learned that the best person to advocate for yourself is yourself. If you work hard, it will be noticed. I've been very blessed to have had some awesome mentors and now some friendships that I could never put a price tag on. I managed to accrue just shy of 3,200 flight hours, 22.5 years of crewing Chinooks, continuous. I've flown all over the United States, several parts of the world. My only regret is that I should have started right that summer, right after high school, because that just would mean that I've gotten to serve, a chance to serve longer. My dad served 4 years in the Air Force, and it wasn't until we were coming home from a trip from Outer Banks, which I love this place for Outer Banks, that I learned that what he did in the Air Force and how much he had enjoyed his time serving. My family was never really that much into the military as I was growing up, so I never gave it much thought when I was growing up. But I always knew that was something that I could fall back onto. Now that as I stand before you, wrapping up my story and my career, I can say Army aviation has been my life. I was blessed to be able to get a job with Special Applications Group as an ALSI tech, working at the ALSI shop, and get to stay right here back at Eats. So I continue to contribute to Army aviation. I hope you found my story, hopefully not too long, but career interesting. I really thank you for all for coming to my ceremony. It means more to me than I can find the words. Sometimes thanking just doesn't seem enough. Please stay, get a bite to eat. It's from Mission Barbecue, as many of you are probably wondering if I cooked for my own event. Stacy would not let me. So, but that's okay. So, thank you everyone. Master Sergeant.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand as the CW4 Captain gives a benediction.
All right, let's pray one more time. Father, as Ken continues his service and walk through life, I ask that you bless him and his family. May they enjoy this next chapter with optimism and the same just positive mental attitude that he's had for so many years. Ultimately, just ask that their life, their work, as they move forward, is a blessing to you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our ceremony. You may form a receiving line up front to congratulate Master Sergeant Apperson and his family.